Most cats do.
Awesome. And now I will pass it along.
Awesome. Good morning. I had to preface that. Good morning to everyone. My name is Pendergrass Thomas. I currently serve as the Director of the Placement Exchange. Forgive my wandering eyes. I'm trying to set things up so that I can see you in my presentation. I just finished my first year in the role effective October 10th. It's been an amazing whirlwind experience. I'm excited for year two. Very quickly, prior to coming to TPE, I was in residence life and housing, was a grad student, a residence life coordinator, an assistant director, and associate director, all in the state of North Carolina, which after talking to Tess is extremely warmer than some places out west right now. So you have my heart and my sympathies. I don't do well when it's below 32. So I don't know how you all are managing it, but I'm sending you lots of warm and sunshine from North Carolina where it's 54 degrees today. I appreciate the invite to spend some time with you all. Just for context, I was able to share a few weeks ago at the regional presidents meeting that NWACUHO holds monthly about some of the changes and things that are happening with NWACUHO, and your current president thought it would be a wonderful opportunity for me to spend some time with you all to share some of that information, which I will do. And I've added a few pieces to have some space for us to have dialogue and to give you some more insight into some things that we are thinking about as a TPE committee moving forward. So I have some slides. I will screen share. I am a visual learner, so my default for facilitating is to speak to visual learners. But I will not read every word on these slides. They are meant to guide us. And then we will get to a point where I will ask you some questions and open the floor for conversation, because I would really love to hear your feedback and questions if you have them. So Tess, if you're comfortable, I welcome questions in the chat. It may take me a minute to pause and get to them. I also have no problem recognizing a hand raised. If it's something that you like, don't want it to leave my mind and I just need to ask this question now, feel free to absolutely do so. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen just so that you can see what I see. And we're going to jump into having some conversation. So a little bit about TPE. I share this because our field sometimes can have the assumption that everybody knows everything and what all the acronyms and what all the letters mean and how long we've been doing this work. TPE has been around for more than 12 years. We started around 2010, and we are mostly known for being the go-to place for job placement in our field. Many practitioners can tell stories of following TPE across the country, wherever NAFA was going to be held in that year, holding interviews, usually to fill your early career or entry-level positions. We are home to NWACUHO and NAFA, so I have two bosses. Kevin Kruger, president of NASPA, and Mary De Niro, CEO of NWACUHO, are both my bosses. TPE is jointly cared for in terms of resources and support. But it's also really important to note that there's the expectation that TPE functions somewhat autonomously, and that we exist to serve the whole profession. So the needs of TPE are met by these two organizations, but that doesn't mean that we don't have relationship with NACA, ACPA, or other organizations who also need career readiness support services and job placement support in the field. The staff, you'll hear me say we a lot, and I will get to that because I have a committee, but TPE really is a staff of one. So hello, I am the director of TPE. I have an associate at NWACUHO. I hope many of you know, Spencer. He is the program manager there. He does a lot of the webinars and workshops and works with the annual conference. He helps me out when his schedule allows, but for the most part, if you email or call TPE, I am the person that you're speaking with. So moving forward a little bit to give you some context, I think there's no denying that there was a tipping point to a certain extent when it comes to placement in our field. A lot of people would pinpoint it at the impact of the pandemic. But coming into this role, doing a bit of data diving, there were some things that were brewing when it came to the placement event much before we got to the pandemic. And so you'll see some pictures on the left and right. That one on the top corner on the left, it's like a mass crowd. If you've ever been to TPE in person, it's huge. I remember being in San Antonio, and it was in a ground level convention center. You got on the escalator, and when you came down, there were just a sea of people, a sea of tables and chairs, and then a sea of like holding spaces for candidates. It's massive. You are going to get candidates. They're in these 3 holding areas by alphabet. Everyone's like holding their stuffed animal, trying to get people's attention. It's like passing and going. It's a lot. And so we were getting feedback from both candidates and employers that as much as in person was personable, it also could have a herd like feeling, particularly for our candidates, right? You feel like you're one of thousands. We may know this on paper, but to be in person, you pass the person who's interviewing with the institution you just interviewed with, or you go to lunch and you overhear 5 or 6 other people who are having the same experience. It can just feel like you're one of a number in the experience. We also started to hear some stories from our candidates around debt. There are a lot of our graduate students who took out additional student loans their spring semester, who got their first credit card, and some other things financially that we don't want to hear about, setting the tone for how you get a job in this field. If you were on the West Coast and TPE happened to be in Philly, you're talking about a cross-country flight to go interview for your first job out of graduate school. And likewise, when we were in LA, right, we're talking about our East Coast and Midwest school, thinking about the cost to fly to and stay in California, LA specifically, for a week for the job experience. So that made us start to have some questions around equity and equality, right? That's a lot for candidates. But what about our small schools, our private schools, our community colleges, our liberal arts institutions that don't necessarily have the recruiting budget of our large Division I type schools? It could cost upwards of $8,000, $10,000, $13,000 to take a staff to TPE for a week. And so holding that intention. And then there's a downward trend. We just saw, depending on which side of the country we were located, there was always a dip. We were not able to be consistent in serving the profession across the board. There was a lot of drive based on geographical location. Add to that, right, COVID-19 comes, we have people who are making job moves for different reasons, stress, family values, location, personal need, the impact of now being in a recession. People don't like to say that word out loud. But if you follow market and trends, there's no denying that things are different. We've got some high inflation and some other concerns. And burnout culture is at a different level than it's been before in our field. And so when you put those things together, everyone is talking about the future or the state of the profession. I think TPE was no different in thinking about what it means for us to remain relevant and serve the needs of the profession. And so I felt like doing that should not be just me. I don't have the depth or breadth to do that by myself. And so I asked some professionals in our field to join me on a task force to look at 3 very specific questions. How are we recruiting? Why are we doing it the way that we are? And what is that impact? When we talk about impact, we're really looking at effectiveness and satisfaction. So effectiveness, cost, benefit, time, and then satisfaction. How do people feel? What do people gain from the way that we are currently doing things? And so here are some of the observations that we came away with. One is what I just said. In terms of association, despite our Twitter handle being TPE 365, most people primarily know us for providing one event once a year where people get their first or maybe second job. When it comes to placement, once per year is no longer standard practice in our field. Right, we're coming back at once per year, but we have been filling vacancies in March, April, May, September, October, December, year round. That idea that people hold in place for a particular time of year is no longer the norm for our field. Likewise, we found that people are then looking for a year-round career resource and an HR development resource. I'll share some feedback with you in just a little while. People are like, I now actually need to think about my career life cycle. After my first job, what comes next? How do I know what's next? How do I search? How do I look? How do I skill build? And that is a need that's being expressed. And there's really no centralized hub for a student affairs practitioner to do that. If you look at the Professional Nursing Association, American Psychological Association, and some other professional associations, they have a career center. So in addition to a job board, it's a place where you can come do some skill building, get some resources and services to think about furthering your career as a practitioner in that field. And so then a special note, the task force wanted to make sure we talked about timeliness. Again, told you I started in October. I convened this task force in May. I told them we had a lot of work to do, but they let me push them for 3 months. We met a lot and did a lot of work to try to move quickly because we recognize that there is the need. And whether or not we're able to respond to it, it's worth noting there's a need in our profession for things to move quickly with change, to respond to the needs of the field very quickly. And that there is an overwhelming feeling that returning to in-person would be a reasonable solution for some of the challenges that employers are facing with filling their vacancies. So we asked three major questions. What is it that professionals need to gain employment and advance in the field? Right? If we're talking about life cycle of the employee, we don't want to just help you get your first job. Retention is important. How do we help you get your second job, your next job, to matriculate and advance in this field? Because when we talk about a robust workforce, it's not going to be robust if we're continuing just navigating people departing the field and filling those vacancies with new folk coming in. But we also want to be able to retain and advance the talent that we have. Likewise, what is it that employers need to help improve and evolve their practices? We get a lot of feedback from candidates and even employers knowing something needs to look different, but what is it that employers need to be able to do that? And then what are the resources that your association can provide you to do that, right? People pay membership and dues. You're all part of the Northwest NWACUHO. That means you're part of NWACUHO. And so as dues paying members, what is it that the association can and should be doing to help you in your efforts to advance when it comes to career services, recruitment of new professionals, and retention and advancement of current professionals? These were the answers that we got. Professionals, practitioners are looking for mentorship and coaching. There are not a lot of like how-to manuals on how to do this. It's very much rooted in our field on networking and relationship. And so access to mentors and coaching, tips and strategies to make those opportunities meaningful. What should I be asking with the mentor? What should I be looking to do? What sort of guidance should I be seeking? Learning experiences. We tell people practice mock interviews. How do I look at a bank or pool of interview questions that might help me prepare for this particular type of position? And then networks and networking, which ties to that need to find mentoring and coaching to move forward. Employers are always looking for the guidelines and the tools. They're like, I've got the people, I've got the committee. You want us to do things differently. What are best practices? And what's the tool to implement that change? How do I coach my committee on it? And how do we make that change happen? Employers are also realistically and fairly looking for a more diverse candidate pool, right? So larger and more diverse. Right now, there's the feedback that there just aren't enough candidates and enough type of candidates to fill some of the vacancies that we have. And then employers are looking for the means to be competitive. And I appreciated the transparency around this when they talked about means to be competitive, because it wasn't just salary. It was, how do I get the language to talk about why my school may post or not post what our salary is, and for candidates to know that I'm not withholding information or trying to be manipulative. How do you navigate that conversation? How do I put together a comprehensive package and explain to those who are interviewing with us that there's salary, there's also tuition support, there's also relocation, there's a live-on allowance, or whatever those benefits are. How do I pull together the best pool of resources that I can to make this position competitive? How do I talk about supervision and professional development? Because we're going to talk about that in a minute. That is a real plug. If you are strong in those two areas, even if and where your salary may be challenging, you can pull candidates. If you can talk about the strength of your supervisory staff and what candidates may get in terms of professional development and cultivation. And then from associations, people are looking for clear and direct communication and education about the purpose of TPE, which is a little bit about what I'm doing with you all and will continue to do with other groups. As we evolve to meet the needs, we've got to be sure that we're telling you what we're doing and make sure you know how to access us and the ways that we're available to you. So this is a quote that came from one of our committee members during a planning session that I have enjoyed including in my presentation because I think it speaks to the next part that we're going to get to, in that we can be very quick to want solutions and remedies, tools, tangible things to do. But oftentimes those things don't take root if we don't necessarily have a shift in mindset. And so I think in part of change management is changing the way we think about things and approach things is pivotal before we move into anything else. And so remember who remain anonymous, but is from your region, share this feedback in our group, and it really stuck with me and caused me to pivot how we moved the group forward. And so it's the one thing that I will read to you because I just love it. There remains a deeply embedded reinforcements that place value on extraordinary work hours, not taking vacation, and even the telling of war stories. While this comment may first appear as victim blaming, it instead suggests that there are some longstanding norms in the profession, actually and likely unintentionally, that invites these behaviors. And while it may also seem that this is more prevalent among seasoned professionals, my observations are that early career professionals are also often compelled to engage in these behaviors in an effort to establish their commitment to the work. When we thought about moving forward with expanding TPE to meet the needs of the profession, this conversation really slowed the group down to be like, why are we doing this? Why does it matter that we are going to invest this time and energy to revamp TPE to meet the needs of the profession if we're going to be in danger of continuing to perpetuate some of the things that are unhealthy in our field and impact our ability to recruit professionals, retain them, and advance them in the work that we do. And so, like I said, after that, it sent me back to the drawing board. And so I came back to the group with this. I said, we've done our assessment. What I recognize is TPE has a tagline. TPE does not have values. TPE did not have a mission or a vision. And that's not necessarily terrible in that we were really just doing that one placement event. But now with this task to think about serving the profession year round, that we get one chance to really do this well, it's a lot harder to backtrack. So how do we put in place a solid foundation that will continue to guide what we do with purpose and intentionality so that we can work on shifting and moving forward our mindset to be sustainable as a profession moving forward? I think we've all had enough conversations on our campuses to know that the way we've been doing things and the why for the way we've been doing things has gotten us here, but it will not necessarily get us to where we need to go. And so how do we solidify what we commit our mindset to be to move TPE into the next decade or so serving the profession? And so I can tell you, our mindset is that we're going to be people-centered, not process-centered, which can be hard for people to adapt to. We intend to prioritize well-being, and we intend to really renew our commitment to innovation. And I'm excited about all three of those because, again, when we think about career life cycle, there's the work that we do, and there's the people that do the work. I think we have two approaches. We can use people as a means to an end, or we can invest in people, and people are able to pour out and serve from the abundance that they have experienced in being fulfilled in the work. So I tend to fall to the latter, invest in the people, and the work will consequently get done. So then we will work on how we introduce right skill opportunities for practitioners to learn and to develop, to build their competence. And then our goal is to provide some of those tools, right? So if you come to something that's offered by TPE, like this, you said, it's beautiful, Donata. You've given me your foundation. I hear where you're going. I'm thinking about it. I hear a few skills I might need to build. Now, where do I go to build those skills? That's what I call professional development. When we identify skills and competencies that we want to develop and improve upon, then where do you go to get those skills, to design that plan, to implement what you learn and cultivate, and then practice that and assess that? So there's a little humor for me. I love this show. I think she's an amazing character. And that's really how I feel when people say, oh my gosh, the future of the profession. It excites me. And I'm really like, well, hello. Now we're talking. This is where we really want to be. And where TPE wants to be is a part of how we transform the way that we recruit, retain, and advance the workforce. You're going to hear me say that a lot. I've simplified it, although it's a large bite for us to take. Recruit, retain, and advance. We are invested in the career cycle of our practitioners. We don't just want to bring you to the market to get your first job and then tell you to figure it out for the rest of your career. We want to be the hand that walks alongside employees for their career and walks alongside our employers every time we have iterations of change, because as long as we work in relationships and with people, the way that we do recruitment, retention, and advancement is going to evolve. And so how do we engage in partnership with you all as institutions and employers to do that? So here we go, the good stuff. We've got guiding principles. And the first is innovative practice. My goal is for us to continue to pull from industrial and organizational behavior and other trends in industries that are really advanced in studying human resources and human behavior, to think about the tools that we offer, cultivation of global knowledge and learning. Recruitment, retention, and advancement happens all over the world. I know in education, particularly higher education, we tend to think that we own it all and know it all. I think there's some promising practices that we can look at and not copy and paste, but look at with critical engagement and think about what is applicable to what we do and how can it apply to suit the needs that we have. And vice versa, what do we now have to offer as student affairs practitioners to other professions who are doing this work? Advocacy and responsiveness. I think responsiveness is huge. There's a lot of feedback in our field right now, right? That we're reactive. We've seen some trends coming. We did not address them, and now we have to. How can we start to do more assessment and learning and be in conversation to read the tea leaves, to stay abreast of what's coming and be able to be ahead of that, to advocate for the partnership between employers and our practitioners who serve as job seekers. And then justice, equity, diversion, diversity, inclusion. I'm going to stop combining that word. Accessibility and belonging, right? It's really hard to say that you affirm diversity and inclusion if what you offer is not accessible. And if when people experience it, they are not able to be themselves and feel that they belong. We want our recruitment and our retention and advancement practices at all points to be places where people can see themselves in this field doing this work. I think where that leaves our control is making sure that we are guiding and supporting employers to know what your campus and what your offices are like, to be committed to doing this work so that when candidates interview and apply, they know that they're going to go through a process that affirms this, and they're also going to land in a team and on a campus that embodies this so that they will want to be retained and advanced in our field. And then the last one is one that the task force recommended that I paused on for wondering if we would get approval, and we did, and it made me so happy. The well-being of the individual and the profession. There's a lot of focus right now on assessing the well-being of the profession being vacancies filled. Again, I told you my philosophy, if the person is good, then the job will be good. And so how do we introduce practices and ways of functioning that prioritize the well-being of the individual practitioner, and in doing so, uplift and affirm the well-being and sustainability of our profession? Which brings me to our mission and our vision. We want to provide an unrivaled service. Unrivaled is a highly emotive word. It's a high aim, and I am committed to climbing as high as we need to go for you to be like, I have not had that experience anywhere else. It means that in a positive way. But our goal is to provide an unrivaled service that inspires our profession to transform the way that we recruit, hire, retain, and advance. And the goal is to inspire because, again, right, we're talking about a shift in mindset. And so TPE cannot come to anyone's campus and tell you all what to do. We can make recommendations. I hope the way that we make those recommendations is done so that you see the why and find value in getting on board with that, and that we do it in a way that inspires you to risk change, risk potential confrontation, risk going into the unknown, to trust that what's on the other side is something that would be good for the sustainability and the longevity of our profession. The mission is a bit long, but the things I do want to point out is that we are going to do this work through what we call connection learning and placement. We are in no way abandoning placement. It's very important to our profession. What we are adding to that is some intentionality around the learning opportunities, connection, which is where we'll find the networking and the mentor piece. And ultimately, it's sustainability. Our goal is to sustain a workforce that is diverse, that is fulfilled, that is healthy and vibrant. You can have any kind of workforce, but I think we want a particular kind of workforce, one that people want to stay in the work that they're doing, and people that want to stay in the work that they're doing, let you know that they're fulfilled, which is usually around values, that they're healthy, which is around mental health and well-being, and that they are vibrant, which is really around that highest level when we look at Maslow's hierarchy. I don't want to overlook equity, inclusion, social justice, ability, and belonging. The task force decided that it was not appropriate to come up with a new statement. Being a part of both the NWACUHO and NASPA, both organizations have very robust statements and aims for their organizations. And so the task force believed that if TPE continued to work towards meeting the expectations of both organizations, we would do well. and serving our constituents and membership in those areas. So that means there's some new things. And I think that's what a lot of people want to hear, right? We are no longer in person. So what are you going to do about it? How is it going to be engaging? How is it going to be warm? How are we going to recapture people? We will have a new virtual event platform and a new job board through a partnership with NALOR, which is an association management tool that serves a lot of nonprofits. And so we'll talk a little bit about what placement looks like, but excited for these two pieces to happen this year. The job board will launch in January. It's a much more interactive user interface. It's kind of the matching feature that people have had to wait for the event to experience. You'll be able to look at candidate resumes year round. Once the candidate registers, they'll be able, or job seeker registers, they'll be able to upload their resume and other information. And as an employer, you'll be able to look at their resume and see who's looked at your job, know how many clicks, know how many views, get some more statistics on the value add for your job posting. We're getting a new website, a much more interactive website that will host some of the webinars that we've had and continue to have our blog and some of the learning and tools that we're going to be introducing. And then lastly, we're going to get a new logo and branding. We've got to be able to communicate to people that there's this shift. And part of what comes with that is the marketing piece and letting people know that we're moving forward. Again, this is just a visual to focus on those three areas, right? Not leaving placement, but adding learning and connection. You will also see me and committee members doing a lot more conference presentations, right? So human resources is a competency area through the NWACUHO standards. When we look at our conferences, a lot of what we experience is service to the profession. We think there's a place for TPE to submit on the schedule for individuals who want to come and learn some more about the recruitment practices, how to work with HR, how to chair a committee, those sorts of skill buildings. If you happen to be a hiring manager, how do we introduce that opportunity at conferences if people are always going to be there? And then of course, the networking, introducing some coaching and consulting to job seekers and employers. Very briefly, these are some of the things that will fall under the content areas. Again, career discovery, networking, job searching, interviewing, how to work with offers, negotiation and onboarding and advancement for some of our job seekers. Continuing to offer career and CV review, resume and CV review, cover letter help, and adding some guidance around using and benefiting from your networking profiles on social media. And then for our employers, right, some of the content areas, the list is a little longer, but it's understandable. Employers are looking for some guidance around how do you incorporate equity, social justice, accessibility, and belonging in your practices when it comes to recruitment, retention, and advancement. How do you get a strategic partnership with your HR office, not just checking in with your HR manager to say, hey, did you approve this job to go live? There are ways in which your HR strategist can work with you throughout the year to look at your budget, to look at your plan for staffing, and to help you think about how to intentionally cultivate your human capital on your team to fit your school's purposes and the budget that you have. How to do an organizational analysis so that you can be more comfortable and competitive when you talk to candidates throughout the process around what they can and should expect to experience, how to brag on yourself appropriately, how to do a good needs assessment to be able to name where your growing edges are and why candidates can know that and still come work with and for you with the optimism that change is processing and happening and you know where your growth areas and where your needs are. How to work with your search committee, support with screening and evaluating, interviewing tactics and support, closing a search, onboarding, and how to work with your new hires. The next piece is volunteerism, which I think you all are familiar with. I mentioned to you that I'm a team of one, but what we are able to do each year happens because there's a committee and they are the most amazing practitioners that I have ever worked with. And shifting to virtual, they have still applied and said, hey, I still want to help with skill building. I still want to help with webinars. And they have been doing that. And so the committee is comprised of a chair and chair select. And then we have subcommittees for candidate development, employer support and development, and then our graduate ambassador program. Those are my people. And I show you their faces because they are just like you. They are mid-level managers, they are entry-level professionals, they are directors, they work in scholarship, they work in housing and residence life, they work in admissions, they work in academic advising. One is in Dubai. So she joins us at 8 o'clock in the evening for her meeting, but they are really committed to helping serve the profession so that we can become robust in recruiting staff to do this work and stay committed and excited about doing this work. So these are the new slides that I've added, and this is where I'm going to do a lot less talking and would love to invite you all for dialogue and conversation, right? My work and the committee's work is to support the field. And so we are representatives of the field, but we don't know everything about this work. And so as we're getting ready to go into placement for the spring, I always pull the previous year's data to give the committee some concrete feedback on more or less the processes that are around the placement experience. But this year we tried something different. We've been reading in our weekly meetings a lot of articles and trying to follow trends in the profession. And so I wanted to share this slide because it's important that I think you all know when the committee comes together to think about the webinars that we offer or the engagement opportunities that we offer, the questions that we're holding in mind is we want to work to draw people to placement. We want folks to be interested in and excited to do this work. What's the context that we're currently doing this in? Like if we were to read the room, are people very excited to be in student affairs? Are they a little intimidated? Is there some trepidation? Are people not interested at all? What does that look like? And so we read articles across the board to have that conversation. And I want to share some notes with you from last week's meeting. And I said, you know, what is the state of the profession that we are trying to draw people to? There's an expectation from employers that TPE will go out and they will pull candidates to come to placement to interview for jobs. And so the committee was like, there tends to still be a negative connotation around working in student affairs, particularly housing and residence life. And the committee members shared a sigh after they said that. And they're like, but that overlooks the fact that there are people who still love this work, who can name that it's difficult, that we're probably doing 2 and 3 people's jobs, and it's still worth doing. So how do we tell a positive story and share positive experiences that don't deny, right, that the work is still hard right now, but that it's still very worthwhile, very meaningful, and very fulfilling? So our employee, our job seekers subcommittee and our marketing subcommittee are going to work together to think about how we tell why stories. How do we get people to talk about why I continue to do this work and what it means for me to continue to do this work? Along with that, you know, there aren't necessarily lines of people waiting to do this work, and there are limited opportunities to move up and stay local depending on where you are. I happen to be in the Southeast in North Carolina. There's 16 state schools. That doesn't count our private schools, our community colleges. So if someone were to move to North Carolina and get their first job, they love the state, there's a lot of opportunity to think about how do you stay in the state or even in the region, right? North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. There's a person on the committee who's at UTEP. Not a lot going on in that area. So if we draw someone for their first job, are we having to have a realistic conversation that says in 3 to 5 years, part of supervision is prepping you for a big move again? Or there are going to be opportunities at this institution for you to move up. So how do we balance when people are looking to get into the field and employers are talking about who they're able to recruit and challenges that they're having? This is a factor that hasn't been talked about a lot. People will start to think about longevity. Will I get to stay? Will I be moving again in 3 to 5 years? What does that mean for a job seeker in their own personal search? How are we speaking about and marketing vacancies that result from departures and vacancies that result from growth? I've got some committee members who are hiring because their offices have seen success and they've been approved for expansion, right? So a lot of times when we're talking about there's a lot of vacancies, the connotation is immediately negative, that it's because everyone has left. Some people have moved around. Everyone has not left. Some organizations have seen growth and are responding to change in an appropriate way and seeking to just add new talent to their institutions and to their teams. How do we make space for a story, for a narrative that tells both of those stories and allows us to hold that intention? There was a lot of conversation around the role of flexibility when hiring. Knowing that some of our pipelines, meaning our graduate programs, don't look like they used to look, how can we adjust to potentially bring in undergraduates, depending on your institution, and they work full-time while getting a graduate degree, as opposed to using the graduate assistantship as a way to staff our teams? There's a lot to unpack there, but depending on the location of an institution, the size of your staff, and your student demographic, is that a possibility to think about how you're able to diversify and expand your candidate pool. And then the last one's where I'll jump. What's the impact of supervision and professional development on the experience when it comes to recruiting and retaining staff? A lot of the conversation around departure, yes, the articles love to talk about salary, but if we talk to people, we're hearing a lot about the impact of their supervisory experience, how they felt supported, how they felt developed, the role that supervisors played on the work environment, coupled with what do I get or what is the option for professional development. I'll give you a short soapbox of mine. What we call professional development, I think, is often service to the profession, right? We tell people propose, write, get published, build your resume. All of those things are wonderful services to the profession. If the professional development goal that you are trying to reach is public speaking, improved writing, journalistic ability, because you want to continue to write and be published, those are perfect professional development goals. Service to the profession helps you network. It helps you engage and build your connections with people. It may help you with deepening some of the research and work that you've done. It's absolutely exciting to brag on amazing things happening on your campus. But when we talk about professional development, particularly in conversation with the skill building that it's argued that supervisors need, our candidates going into institutions where they're going to sit down and actually craft a professional development plan to say, I now supervise a staff of RAs or I supervise a staff of entry-level professionals. I have to become skilled at 360 feedback, how to navigate a team, successful ways to run a meeting, how to engage in crisis, how to recruit, how to work with my HR team. How do you work on those skills as a part of your own professional skill building and growth and competency? That's what we mean by professional development. And so, right, so what is that and how do people get it? So when you get feedback and people say, you might want to improve in this area, that's great feedback. What are the resources and the tools for that? If people say they're ready to move up, who's having the conversation with folk around? Supervision is both an art and a science. A lot of supervisory roles are what I call 60-40 split. You still have a project. So you may be the assistant or associate director for residential learning and academic initiatives, comma, and you supervise 3 to 4 people. Those are 2 jobs. And we often are able to easily recruit the person for the project work because we know what the output looks like. It's a lot harder sometimes to recruit the person for the skill set and competency needed to supervise individuals and bring them together in a team to be successful. What we're also talking about, what employers are needing and wanting from TPE, because that matters and we absolutely want to deliver. And so our earlier timeline, we were so close, but with new software had to peter back to March a little bit. I can tell you, you should anticipate that TPE will happen in February moving forward. February works a lot better with our schools on a quarter system. And again, reading the room on terms of trends and hiring earlier in the spring will help folks who need to fill vacancies mid-year and midterm. Once we get a handle on our new platform, our goal is to offer a fall TPE somewhere around late October, early November, so that folks who encounter vacancies in early September, once the first 6 weeks are over, don't have to wait till the spring to fill a vacancy. They'd be able to attend a virtual TPE, meet candidates, run that process, and hopefully have someone join you for your spring semester. Heavier advertisement and incentive to candidates. We're working on trying to find that pipeline, whether it's looking at other graduate programs, including social work, counseling, communication. How do we expand our telling of the story of what it means to work in student affairs and help people with strong transferable skills be able to see this field as a possibility for them? How do we start to talk to undergrads, right, and reignite that pipeline into some of our heaps of graduate programs so that people can come through, get that learning and knowledge, and matriculate into the field? The other one that stuck out, have a way for employers to host more informational job fair sessions. Almost every other field engages in career fairs at colleges and universities. We are hoping with the new virtual platform that this recruiter day we're going to test in the spring is something we can do more often. It's a virtual career fair. So how do we just have an opportunity for people who don't know about student affairs to learn more and to meet employers who are hiring on a more regular basis in conjunction with and apart from when we're having the placement event, so that we just continue to pump and move the brand of student affairs. And then lastly, a question that we put on the survey to folk who engaged in TPE last year, the new question, but I really want to know what they were thinking. What should ethical, equitable, and accessible staffing look like? And I don't think you'll see any surprises here. Helping those searching understand the process. A lot of new professionals, we make the assumption that because TPE has been around for a while, that they just know how this works. People don't just know. We know because someone has told us and taught us how to navigate this thing. We had a person say as a current hiring manager, sorry, there was no training on how to use the internal hiring system or to work with HR. So how to get some guidance around how to handle what's expected on your university side, while also benefiting from a product and service like TPE. And then one that I really love, do retention interviews with your current employees. Assessment is a helpful tool. You don't want to over-assess. There are various ways to assess. But I would talk about people who've interviewed with your institution. Do you send a short survey to candidates? Thank you for interviewing with us. We're also always looking to grow and improve our process. We love your feedback around your engagement with us. And I suggest people do that around communication, timeliness, and the actual opportunities to interview so that you know, did we lose people because we didn't communicate quick enough? Is that a pace we can control, or is that up to our HR? Timeliness, were people waiting to hear from us? Are there ways that we can update people more about where they are in the process? And then the actual piece. Well, I wanted to work with you. I was hoping to have met with so-and-so, but I didn't. Or that you're affirmed. I met with the right people to learn all that I needed to know to make a good decision about this position. So how do we, not send people 50 questions, but get a pulse on what the actual experience with our team and what our processes is. So two things I hope you've heard about, but if you haven't, I will share them very quickly in terms of the committee. This is their big project. It's the TPE Academy. It's the crash course, or what I call the jump start for people as they're thinking about going into the recruiting season. It touches on what we think are the main areas that most people either want to brush up on or get some critical help with before they start their process. And for candidates, that's right. Like, how do I talk about who I am, my identities and values, and why I'm looking for a job? How do I actually figure out what it is I want to do, align my skills to do that? How do I search? And for our employers, how do we do some needs assessment and get ready to or improve our marketing so that we can recruit candidates? How do I get my committee together, train them well, think about interviewer bias and some of the other expectations? And then what's our interview and assessment process? So there are lots of other things that could happen, but in terms of just like an intensive boot camp to kind of checklist things and make sure you're good, or get some help with things where you have a void, that's what we're hoping the TPE Academy can do. So we offered it once in November, and we anticipate that we'll offer it again at the end of January as we get closer to the placement event. Which brings me to placement. It will have a recruiter day on the 22nd. You will notice there is a gap between the recruiter day and the placement event. That is intentional, and I'm working on a lot of very detailed information about our decision to go this route and how we hope, right? We're inspiring how we hope employers will use that time. We want everyone who's interested in a job to come. So it's going to be free for our job seekers, and it won't be free because we have raised the price for employers exponentially. That's not the goal. But it means that anyone who is interested will be invited and encouraged to come to the recruiter day to meet with employers who will be interviewing at TPE. That will be the opportunity for your organization, your team, to have your booth set up all day, well, 12 to 6, half a day, to brag, talk about the positions that you have, let folk come into the virtual meeting room, talk. With one click, Ben could say, hey, Nick, I'm glad you got your invitation to come learn about us today. We'd love to talk to you more for just a moment. You click it, you and Nick have gone into a one-on-one space to talk very specifically. You're going to use it for screening questions, you can do that. When you finish, Nick is like, thanks, Ben, this was a really good conversation. You go back to that large room, and it feels, the goal, or what I've experienced, is that it's very much like walking at a career fair. You stop in, you hear more, you learn more, you step to the side, you have a conversation, you thank them for your time, you move forward. It gives employers the opportunity to say, hey, that was a really good conversation. I think you should consider applying for the position. Go back to the job board, you apply for the position. With one click, you're able to say, we've got your application through our HR. Click this button. We look forward to seeing you between the 7th and the 9th for your first round interview. So it's virtual, but it's a much more seamless process. And we put the week gap in hopes that it will encourage employers to not miss and not have a separate process for people who've applied directly through your university or institution. So we'll give some guidance around how to communicate that to people who are applying straight through your university who don't know about TPE. But for all those applicants where you say, hey, we've noticed you applied, we'd love to see you on the 22nd. And then between the 22nd and the 7th to look at your full pool of candidates. And for the convenience of TPE, to provide that virtual space for you to hold all of your interviews, because the feedback is right. Everyone has access to Zoom or meetings or Teams. Everyone can have a virtual interview. What I think that TPE can continue to offer is the convenience of moving from that review process to informational recruitment fair, to immediately saying, we'll see you over these next 3 days, click here, sign up for an interview. And that process is all now managed in one place without employers having to come up with all their virtual links. The chat feature will be there instead of sending the lengthy emails. There's a lot more openness for the two-way dialogue and communication, which is feedback that we have received. So I said 30, it took me 45. I'm really sorry. But that still leaves time for conversation and questions. I'm going to stop sharing because I really would welcome that. Again, the task force was amazing. I'm grateful to them. But again, it was 12 people trying to help me think about the needs of an entire profession. And so I welcome from you any thoughts you have about what I shared, some things that you think TPE should still be thinking about, or anything else that's on your mind.
I think I want to just start by saying thank you for presenting the information and hearing more about the process. My own work doesn't necessarily intersect with some of our professional selection. And so I have colleagues who tend to attend and participate in TPE. But I really appreciated hearing you talk about it and some of the values and the changes, and not just what those changes are, but why you made them. I think that's exactly where we need to be. And certainly a lot of things you said resonated with me. So yeah, I just want to say, I want to share my appreciation.